It's 12 o'clock in Frisco, Texas, and it's time for Smoker Broker Radio with Robert Mesh, a.k.a. the Smoker Broker. Robert is the owner of Small World Realty and has employed hundreds of real estate agents in his 17-year career. He has instructed and mentored over 10,000 real estate agents at the highly acclaimed Champions School of Real Estate and is considered an expert in Texas residential realty. Robert is also an advocate of true entrepreneurial spirit and has helped many to transition from corporate America into the world of self-employment. And now live from the studio to your world, the Smoker Broker.
Hey, welcome to Smoker Broker. I'm Robert Mesh, and I am the guy they call Smoker Broker. Happy Thursday to you. Happy December. Happy holidays. Whatever it is you celebrate, it is that time of the year. Probably most important, more than anything, we are finally getting to the end of this most horrible year in recent times. Not horrible in a lot of aspects, but health-wise and attitude-wise and just mental health, period. Awful. Just awful, worst times. And it'll be probably a more meaningful new year this year, just to toast this one goodbye and to have a new one. And there's a lot of things on the horizon that there's light for sure. There's light. It might not be the greatest light out there because there's still a lot of things that have to be hammered out. And there's still a lot of stuff we have to do to get towards them. But it's there. The light's there, and it looks like that we might have some return to normalcy at the mid part of next year, and at least that's in place. But until then, we're still facing the highest counts. The virus is definitely alive and well out there. We continue to have lockdowns. We're seeing a lot of that in Texas. We're seeing that in other areas of the country, especially out in New Mexico. It's brutal there. I mean, California is under a massive lockdown right now, and those are not good things for the economy when that happens, and we certainly don't talk about the opinions of, for our health reasons, is it the right or the wrong things to do? Because there's no agreement on that, but there's no mistaking from the economic side, it hurts. It hurts, and whereas we think we're out of it, we're not. We're still there. We seem to get a little comfortable with it, and then the other wave comes through, and we're still having to fight it. And when we're having to fight it, it affects us the way we do our business. So it's an interesting time frame because we're going into the winter, where we'll have, flu mixed in with COVID. Typically, from a real estate perspective, the winter is not a great selling month or great selling season, but we believe that these sales are going to carry over into the winter. So it's an interesting time for us, dealing with such negativity and such despair for some people, but positivity and prosperity for others. So it's very hard to determine the consistency right now of where we all are and what our feelings are. I've mentioned on several shows previous that it is difficult when we talk to some people because some people are doing just great and others are just suffering the worst it can be. And that makes it very hard it's almost like a false sense of happiness for some, or a guilty sense of happiness for some, and a great despair for others. And that despair will continue. Brent and I were talking a little while ago about everything seems okay and fine, and it has been for a lot of people, but one telltale that's out there, and this is certainly real estate related, those forgivenesses on the rents and the forbearances over the last 6 months, those are all about to expire. And when they expire, and that's going to be difficult for a lot of people out there, throw in a lack of stimulus that's had trouble getting through the government. And now we really are talking about a bigger struggle. So we might still be seeing some not so happy things as we move forward. But we do believe from a real estate perspective, the market is strong enough to overhaul any of those issues. We've mentioned many times on the shows over the past few years that just because a market tanks in real estate wise isn't a bad thing, because when it tanks, it means there's a lot of there's a lot of more valued property that you can buy for an investment. And that's what we typically see in a worse real estate market. So from a real estate perspective, we kind of win either way on it, but most people would still prefer a more prosperous real estate market because that's when everybody seems to be doing better. So we still have a bumpy road ahead. You know, if I was in flight right now, I would compare it to the captain coming on saying, "Hey, look, I'm going to keep the seatbelt signs on. I'm just going to keep them on until we land because we just haven't seen anything that much better the rest of the time. We've done this trip several times already." And, you know, I compare it to that because that's how I feel when I'm on a plane. And I handle turbulence okay. God forbid my wife, she doesn't. But I handle turbulence okay. But nobody's a fan of knowing that the turbulence is going to be there the whole ride through. And I think that's where we're at right now. I think we're on the plane where they're just telling us that, you know, buckle up and you know, hang in there. You know, we're going to land. It just might not be the best landing.
I'll be the passenger that ignores that and goes straight to the bathroom.
Or straight to the bathroom, or try to drink to the oblivion so I don't recognize it, one or the other. But I really do. The more I talk about it, I think that's how I feel where we're at. So interesting times. We're going to continue to put our heads down like we always do and do what we're supposed to do and hope we steer away from the bad stuff and hope all of our family and everybody around us, our clients are the same, and try as much as we all can to enjoy the holiday season, which can be difficult. I will say on a positive note that, I don't know if it means anything, I've noticed this year that there seems to be more Christmas lights out than there have been in a long time. And I don't know if that's just because there's a general sense of maybe some people are putting more meaning back into the holidays. Maybe some people are like, look, it's the only thing that makes me happy. Either way, it's a good thing. You know, it's kind of it's a good thing to see. Maybe the virus has brought back some traditional values to us and what we should be thankful for and all that type of stuff if we try to put silver linings on it. Always hard to put silver linings on a deadly virus. Very hard to do. But that has been the main topic, or the, I guess, summary of this entire year, is the virus and what it can do and what it has done to us and where we go from there. Speaking of the real estate market in general, when it comes to not just COVID, but all the factors that we look at, we were talking a little while ago about commercial real estate and how they're going to tend to fare with all this. You know, there's no doubt we're seeing a shrinkage of some of the corporations, and there's a lot of retail on the ground that's vacant. Has been before COVID too. COVID hadn't changed the retail space from, you know, they were already struggling. Now it's just more so. But we do tend to have a very intelligent country. There are a lot of intelligent people out there, and you are going to see something done in a very spectacular fashion, in my opinion, when it comes to the vacant retail. Somebody's going to figure out what to do with that stuff. So we're going to be watching that carefully, because commercial real estate's up in the air right now, whether it thrives or whether it's going to be a problem. But we think there's going to be enough money out there to generate very positive vibes in the commercial world. And of course, the commercial world, residential follows the commercial world. Residential follows commercial. Usually, or not, take it the other way around. Commercial follows real estate, where they're going through, and we're following the same path. So the only difference this time is it probably isn't going to be consistent. It's probably not going to be consistent. Residential is probably going to continue to thrive for quite some time, whereas commercial might have more of a dip than it has in previous years. But that's out for the jury. You know, nobody knows where that is going to be. Brent, what else is out there for December? What else? Anything interesting that we've been talking about with the group? While I'm thinking about it before we get into our topic.
I'm seeing a lot of people that are wanting to get into real estate now because they're using this time off for the holidays. Either they've been laid off or they're thinking about their future and the New Year's resolutions. And a lot of people are looking to get into real estate on the side. And so now's a great time to head to join.swr.com and join up.
So that's why he's on the show, because he reminds me of things that are important. It is a fact that we do tend to see a spike in people who are getting ready for the new year, and they've made their plans and their goals, and they're instituting and executing those goals to say, hey, look, now's the time to start a different career. We are seeing a spike in real estate and the recruits that are coming in. So of course, for us, that's good, because we do run a very large team, and we have seen a good December and November month as far as recruits coming in. So that's an interesting stat, that we're seeing positivity in the recruiting side. But it does tend to happen at this time of the year. And just like Brent said, it is a very good time to get into real estate. It is. The market's thriving. You know, you don't know whether your job is going to be solid next year. Each of us got into this because we weren't sure our jobs were solid. Majority of the SWR group followed the same path that they got into because they didn't know if their jobs were going to be strong enough. This is a very good landing space for those that are like, I'm not so sure what my future beholds, or I want a different future. You should check out joinswr.com so you can see what it is that we offer, because we are one of the few brokerages that actually encourage part-time real estate and multiple income streams. So that is a good, even though it's a plug, it's a good one, because there's a lot of good for everybody in that particular move, if that's what you're going to make. Brent, anything else on a live level that real estate subject wise that we've been talking about that's out there trend wise?
No, I mean, I know there's still a lack of inventory big time. That's still trending. People are moving here like crazy, and we're starting to see, I don't know about you, but I see a lot of people that are trying to buy land now. I mean, a lot.
Yeah, land certainly becomes more valuable when the people are trying to depart from the city because they're concerned about the mass gatherings. They want privacy, and where you get privacy is far outside the town with more acreage to keep people away from you. So we are seeing that. We are seeing a greater, we were doing that 5 minutes before the show, looking at someone who was doing something similar. So that's a good point too. We are seeing a bigger investment in land than we've seen in a long time. So interesting there too. Don't know whether that's more fallout-ish, concerned about the end of the world, or that's actually more of a, hey, I just don't like people anymore. Maybe
I think it's that. I think it's that, and people are working from home now, and so they figure, well, if we're going to make a move, let's get a little bit of land, not have neighbors right on us, and they're just going back to how it used to be.
All true statements, and good stuff there. Okay, we're going to continue our conversation. We had some great conversations last week about possession, but we really never got into, we prepped it for possession, but we really never got into what happens when we go through possession. So we're going to spend today talking about that ugliness, and it's not very pleasant. Okay. It's not very pleasant what happens inside of possession. And we're not going to go through the whole summary again, because that's what we did last week. This time we're going to just jump right in and start talking about what happens when we go through and we started having possession issues, and what those possession issues will cause, judging on what has happened so far. So Brent, let's talk about the generic reason why we have a delayed close. That typically is what? Why are we usually missing a close?
Number one is usually lender issues. Not pointing out any lender in particular, but I mean, there's just always things that can happen. If a buyer is not supplying the documents required to the lender, maybe there's an issue with the title company. Anything like that can cause a close to be delayed. And like you said last week, you hate closing on Thursdays and Fridays because of that very issue.
Yeah, explain to everybody why now versus 5 years ago those closes get delayed a little bit more because of government resources and mandates.
Right. Well, it was Dodd-Frank that created that, and we have to have the closing disclosure, and that has to go out to the borrower 3 days before close for them to review. And it has to be, there's an initial disclosure and there's a final disclosure. And there's only so much variance that is allowed between the two. And so, in the past, before that happened, they could get the HUD-1 out to the guys, an hour before close,
Right.
And now it has to be sent to them 3 days before close. And the thing, and it hasn't been too bad, I've noticed, but when it first came out, if there were any financial changes, they were going to have to do like a whole new 3 days when they were trying to get the bugs worked out.
Look, I'll give the lenders their credit. They've done a better job than I thought they were going to do with this, because I thought this was just going to be the biggest massacre, and that we were going to just lose everything when it came to time frames. But in the end, it really didn't work out like that. It ended up being okay. They did a really good job, and I was actually more impressed than I've been with them in almost anything that we've ever done when it comes to dealing with the lender. And for the most part, they have done that. Now, with that said, there are times that it doesn't. Well, I've got two this week, two this week that are in this category that are being pushed because of the 3-day mandate. So it does still happen, and we can actually start talking about some of those. That's why this show is great for real estate agents, because we talk about live issues. I'm actually going to talk about 2 of my current deals. This was my own personal. I don't do very many because I usually run the group, but I like to keep my feet wet. And I've got a couple this week that are some doozies. So we're going to talk about them. We'll give you some live practice as to what's happened and how we get past that. So that'll be kind of fun too. So lender delays are tough on us. They start causing problems. So let's get into the problem. Let's start talking about what it looks like when the lender delays. So Brent, we're Friday, supposed to close. Got the buyer at 9 a.m., the seller at 10 a.m. Should fund by noon. Possession takes place. But we get the call late last night or this morning saying we are missing something. We're going to have to delay.
We don't have
What are the immediate problems for the buyer that's moving in?
Well, it depends how long the delay is, right? If it's an hour, fine. If it's like maybe 3 hours, you're going to have a question, is that house going to fund that day? Because remember, buyers don't get to take possession of the house. They don't get the keys until the loan has actually funded. Right.
Closing is not, by the way, it's a great takeaway from today, especially for a newer agent. Just because both parties signed does not mean it's a done deal. The money has to transfer over. And yes, it doesn't happen very often, but I have seen in my career where both the parties signed and the deal did not go through. They've been terrible. And we're going to talk about those too, but it does happen. So that's a great takeaway from today. It has to fund.
Right. So, if we don't fund that day, or if they say, well, we don't know when it's going to close, hopefully beginning of next week, because you can't close on a Saturday. So, they're gonna push it to a Monday. And what happens?
Actually, let's talk about that, because that's a current event. You can close on Saturday, but what can you not do?
Fund.
You can't fund. So what the hell did it matter anyways to close on Saturday if you can't fund? So that's happening this week too.
Jeez. So, if we're pushing close to say Monday, and the issue we touched on last week a little bit is you've got a buyer showing up with a moving truck. You've got sellers that are maybe waiting to close on their own house on another purchase. And, you say, hey guys, sorry, you're going to have to wait, 2 or 3 days, or God forbid, if it's a 3-day weekend, you're going to have to wait till Tuesday. I'm sorry. But,
So we're going to talk about both sides, by the way, but let's talk about the buyer first. All right. Where is the buyer super concerned right now? There's many concerns, but what are some of the few that they're
we've got utilities set up. We've got people coming in to get cable set up. We've got movers, that we've already paid for. Maybe we've got carpet cleaners. Maybe we've got painters.
Talk more about the movers. What's the financial consequence of the movers? You said that we have movers waiting on us. What do the movers do when they have to wait on us?
They charge you per hour, so they're going to be billing you.
They do, and it's expensive. And then after they charge you per hour and you've waited till like as long as you can, and then you finally got the real bad news that says you can't do it, they have to haul off, store it, and then come back. And it ain't cheap with certain companies.
Right. And at that point, we know, though, there are some extraordinary circumstances, but that's the agent's fault right there, because they should have absolutely prepped that buyer. Hey, you don't want to be moving in the day you're closing.
All right, so let's talk about that, because that's a big takeaway from the show today. And he's right. We do have some say in this. Buyer might not have listened to us, but at least it would minimize the problems we're having right now had we done the right type of expectation. So when I do it, and same with Brent, when we deal with the buyer, we tell them this is not a perfect situation. Trust me when I say this can all fall apart, and it is most likely that there could be delays. You should not be scheduling everything on a minute's notice to go right through and say this is going to go through and I know it, because we don't know it.
Yep.
And if we don't know it, and the lender doesn't know it, and the title company doesn't know it, you've got a problem, okay? Because you don't know for sure. Now you're going to start scrambling. Now here's the thing. I got no problem with you scheduling the things for the day of, because that's what you should do common sense wise. But there should be a backup plan, and you should be well aware, and everybody should be able to react on the snap of a finger, that if there is in fact a delay, there is a backup plan that we know what we're going to do. And that is where most agents fail.
Yep. You've got to prep
most
your
agents
plan.
fail. They say you should have a backup plan because this is probably going to happen. Okay. There's a chance that this could happen. Not probably. So setting the expectation that you can schedule everything, but do not be shocked if we tell you that you're going to have to reschedule those. All right.
Well, this
So
will be good for
that's a
you guys
big
to
deal.
go back a couple of weeks and watch our episode on setting client expectations, because that just ties right in with this conversation.
Actually, I'll give a plug to one of the vendors we use, folks called Moveplicity. It's Movplicity, I believe. This is a type of vendor that they will take care of all that setup work for you, all those utilities. And I find that they're very valuable. I find they're very valuable for a lot of reasons, but that in particular, when you have to go through and change all those things super quick, that is something that they take out of your hair and they do it. And I found them to be very, very useful in those types of situations. Plus, they don't charge anything,
Right.
So I think that that's a win-win. So a little shout out there for our folks at Moveplicity. They're great vendors, and they've helped us out. Plus, I find that they're a good referral resource. Even if you're not going to be moving, they're still a good referral resource because they vetted the people that are under their lines, and they know those people and they've worked with them. So I think that helps in this type of situation. Okay, that's one. What else could be a problem for the buyer right now? They can't get in, their utilities are off. What are some other things that could be wheels off right now that's affecting them? And most important, that's contributing to their personal anguish, because that's the problem right now. We've taken a business transaction and we've made it personal, and that doesn't work out well for anybody.
Right. Well, it comes to mind is, they've got maybe family coming in town to help them move.
I had more specific. What if they traveled?
Yeah.
What if they came in for the weekend? What if the buyer themselves? We see this all the time, where the buyer only has so many days off at work.
Yep.
And they can't move it. And they already took off the day that they've been credited for.
Yep.
And now so we see that a lot too.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had a buyer that was moving into a new construction, and the deal hadn't funded quite. It was going to still fund the same day, but she's outside getting rained on because she's doing all her stuff out there, standing outside, waiting with a mattress, waiting to get keys, because it was a new construction. So, all kinds of issues can arise if you don't prep your buyers and know, hey, we're closing on us Friday. There is probably a 50% chance that we will not close on this Friday. So let's set your moving.
Or you do close on Friday, but it's too late to fund. It's the same damn thing.
Yep. So let's just say we're closing on Friday. Plan your moving for Tuesday, Yeah.
Something else we see sometimes at possession, and I guess I should save this conversation when we get to the seller side. It's when the seller is still in the house. They're running behind, which I have to say. And I'm biased towards this, and I have friends that have done it before, but let me tell you, if you're running behind to get out of your house, your priority levels in life, I just question, because how you get to where you don't know.
You have a month.
a month that you've been telling. You talk about the king of procrastinators, and I'll argue with anybody who wants to get on the air with me and say, no, that's not what happened. I'm like, it is what happened. You can say you got busy too, but that's not going to take 30 days away from knowing that you had to be out, and there you are screwing around. So I'm going to say that conversation with the seller side, because
that's something I've never had to do, but I can just imagine walking in on a final walkthrough and just seeing.
You've never had it with the seller still there?
No, not yet.
Wow, we gotta bust you up a little bit. That's happened. I can't count. I can't count the amount of times it's happened in my career, and it's awful. It's awful where the lack of judgment and estimating how long it takes for you to get out of the house is enormous. Because if you really look at how much stuff you have in your house, it is not going to be a fun day for you.
I have had it where, they had, they were probably 90% of the way out, but I haven't had it to where they hadn't done anything and they're just kind of sitting there.
So that's a problem too. What happens when they're not out and they're struggling? And our biggest concern right now is that they get out. But if they have to rush to get out, what usually is probably going to tail in with that? What's going to happen?
There's going to be damage in the house. It's going to be a mess.
That's what I'm looking for. They're not going to clean it.
Nope.
They're going to be they're just trying to get out. Now we got a house that's a wreck and a buyer who has their dreams of white picket fences, and they're about to walk into a whole load of shit because somebody was, delayed in doing what they should have done. Right.
Yep.
So we see that too. That can be pretty disappointing. All right. So you go through and you start talking about these delays, and obviously we're painting a picture of nastiness with this, that it's not a situation we want to be in. Let's start talking about the legal push. We joked last week on the show that this time period is literally one of the 3% parts of this business that's the worst time of your life, because it makes you nervous, because you got people whose lives are in convenience wise are in a great jeopardy right now, and monetarily there's issues. So those two things don't combine very well. So we have those out there swimming around, and we're now in it. Now let's start talking about the true nastiness. This is the heart of the show, where we start getting into what's going to happen. So you already know the consequences of a buyer not being in there when they need to be. We probably could have talked about 50 more reasons why they have to be in there. Actually, one of the reasons, I was just in school. What if they have to be in school and they have to have an address registered?
Yep.
And they can't register that school until they have that address. That happens sometimes. You talk about causing a panic. Now you've mixed personal issues in with your kid issues, and that's just not fun for just about anybody. All right, so you got that out there. That's another one. So obviously it's not a pretty picture. What do you think the buyers usually do when they've been finally told that it ain't happening, which is not good news?
I'm going to sue them.
so all right, so that's one. I wasn't going to go that route, but we can.
Yeah.
All right, they're going to sue. Who's the buyer going to sue?
Yeah, well, they're trying to sue the seller.
Because what's their claim going to be?
Well, are we talking about the seller hasn't gotten out yet, or are we talking about lender delays?
My bad. I was wondering where you were going with that. Hold on to that one, because you're going a different route. Lender is delayed. Buyer's ready to move in.
Oh,
they're not going to close for Friday.
They're going to scream at the lender and want money from the lender.
That's right. So they're going to be mad at the lender, which they probably should be, unless it was their fault that they caused it, which I'm sure the lender says that, and I'm sure the buyer says, no, it's not.
Yep.
But they're probably going to take a shot at the lender. They're probably going to start with, I'm going to sue the lender. Won't do you any bit of good, because they have so many damn disclosures on, that this happens, that there's no way you can do anything with them. But you're going to start with that. So that's the first one. First takeaway. Step one, buyer can't get in house. What do they do? Yell at the lender. You need to do something about this.
Yep.
That goes on for a few hours. When they finally find out nothing's going to happen, all right, then they have to take into step two. What's the next step? With a buyer who is now homeless, has nothing except all their stuff, what's the next step they are obviously probably going to ask?
I don't know. I always turn my phone off at that point, so no one's ever been mad at me.
Nobody accused you of being a dummy.
No. Yeah, they go after that buyer's agent. You didn't tell me whatever.
All right, so then they go out to the buyer agent. They say that you should have been more upfront about telling me this, or that, which is a really shallow accusation, because honestly, in the end, all we can do is tell you it's a possibility. Other than that, we can't be responsible for the actual breach and not being able to close. All right, so you get that. Then what might a buyer do when they find out that they've yelled after a couple people? Now they got all their stuff and they have nowhere to go. What might they tell the seller? Or what might they ask of the seller?
Well, can we move in? Can we go ahead and move in? We've got all our stuff.
That's right. So here's another takeaway. When this happens, and mind you, it's the buyer's fault.
Yep.
Because the buyer takes responsibility for the lender. When this happens, a lot of times the common sense dream behind that is, well, the seller's already out because they had to be out. I should just be able to move in because we know that we're going to be able to close.
Yep.
Right? There's some problems with that, though, and they're nasty, too. The first one is you don't know you're going to be able to close. You're assuming because some other person told you could. By the way, the same person who's delayed right now is the one who told you close, so that's a poor assumption at best. That doesn't mean a damn thing. We've seen plenty of deals at the last minute where the lender's like, oh, we found something and we can't do it anymore. All right, so that one's out the window. What else? What else is something following that?
I mean, as far as can we at least put our stuff in? Can we just do a buyer's temporary lease? Or
they're going to ask that they want to move in without owning the property. They want to move in before they've paid for it. All right. So now they're asking the seller, who they've already pissed off tremendously, that they want to move in. Now, it's almost hard to talk about these separate if you don't combine them a little bit. Most of the time, where is the seller going?
Well, they're moving into a house of their own, a new one.
And most of the time, if they're going to move into another house, what do they need to happen before they can do that?
They need the funds from the sale of their current house to buy the new one.
The funds, and he's smart enough not to say they need to close. He said they need to have the funds from that house to close on this one. So now we don't just have our problem. Now we have a we problem, because now it's not just the buyer that has an issue. Now the seller has an issue. And if our seller is a buyer on another house and they have an issue, then guess who also now has an issue?
Yep.
The seller of the other house.
Yep.
This is what we call the domino effect. And we're not talking about the pleasant type of dominoes. We're not talking about the game. We're not talking about pizza. We are talking about how the theory is if you push one domino down, the rest of them fall. And that's exactly what's happening right now in this process. The worst part is we're the lead domino. Okay? We're the lead. If we're the buyer agent, we're the lead domino. You want to get personal with this? It's not just your bad luck right now. It's 5 or 6 other families' bad lucks right now. And they're mad at the person on top of them, and then the person on top of that person, which eventually leads back to you. So you have caused some major unpleasantness. Now I told you, this is a bad show. This is a bad show because you cannot appreciate how terrible this is. You're sitting there because you're selfish, and you are. We all are. You're worried about your stuff.
You're waiting for your check.
Yeah, you're worried about your stuff and everything, and you got all these other people behind you that their lives are in disarray, and some of them might be in jeopardy of losing. Because remember, we're just assuming everybody's going to wait. Not all of them are going to wait. Some agent be like, no, you were supposed to close on this day. If you're not doing it, you're out.
Mm-hmm.
So you're playing with a lot of people's lives. You know, it never ceases to amaze me. And you learn this in real estate after years. You learn to become, it's funny, most people will tell you I'm a pretty hot-tempered guy sometimes. I've mellowed a lot over the years because I've seen so much. And this process here has really helped me, because you get to where things are so bad that you really don't know how to control anything. For instance, it never ceased to amaze me. This is what I was going to talk about a second. When the buyer, they're the ones who start pitching an absolute fit because they're mad. And I'm like, I'm glad that you're upset, because there's a whole lot of other people that have the same level of upsetness right now, and it's because of you.
But you recommend that lender. You told us to use that lender.
They don't care about anybody except themselves.
Yep.
But they're so mad. I'm like, y'all, you're just one part of this process. There's a lot of people who are upset right now. How about we keep our eye on the ball here? And I miss the trees, the trees of the forest, knowing that we got bigger issues.
Well, and the problem comes too, though, is if you're the one who referred that lender to them, and you only gave them one choice. You didn't give them.
There's another start. We haven't even gotten into how'd they get to that lender.
Mm-hmm.
If it was you,
yep,
you're gonna have more to answer for too. By the way, don't think I haven't seen it where a client tried to sue the agent for the referral too, which I think is awful. I don't know how that's legal. I think it should be banned. That's an act of common good. And then because the referral goes wrong, they're like, oh, you should have known. I'm like, hold on. I can't predict when someone's going to shoot somebody. You can't say I'm going to predict how I know they're good or not. All I can do is go by their track record.
Yeah.
So, all right, that one's in there too. We haven't even got to the nasty part yet. We're just talking about the other people, right? All right, so buyer. That's why I told you had to do 2 shows. I knew we started having this conversation last week, and I'm like, well, it's another hour, because the conversation alone going through the deal takes that long. So it was good that we split the 2 shows up. All right, so buyer says to the seller, I'm mad at you because my stuff didn't work. So I want to move in right now. What do you think most of the sellers, how do you think most sellers feel about A buyer saying they want to move in when they haven't paid their house for their house.
Yep. Tough luck.
So the initial response is typically get lost, especially if they're being inconvenienced now too. Those of you who are general public that watch this show that don't have a lot of experience in this, and you're like, well, that's kind of rude. Believe me, the only one who's rude is the one who disrupted the process, which is the buyer. To sit there and say that the seller should just openly open their house, which it is theirs, and let somebody come in that they don't know and basically rent the house until they can pay for it, that's not something every seller is thrilled about. Now, there's a lot of reasons why a seller doesn't want to do that. And obviously, the number one reason is they need to make sure that they're going to get paid, and they're not sure that that's going to happen. And now they have somebody in their house and they can't get them out.
Yep.
And now you go through the eviction process, which that's fun. Okay. You have these buyers that come in there, and that's what they're pitching. They're saying that they want to do this. There's another problem, though, with letting a buyer in. Now, this is the one that most sellers don't say, but in their mind, they're thinking. And it's kind of what we call in the industry a test drive of the house, right? Yep. Now, most sellers aren't afraid of their house. They're not afraid to state what's in their house or if there's any issues with their house because they've been living in it for years. That's not the problem, okay? But no seller wants somebody to come in and start really looking at their house. And when you buy a new house, you really start looking at every single thing when you finally get into it. Now, this is usually after close. There's not a person in this world that doesn't have some type of buyer remorse when they buy a house. I'm on I think I've built 6 or 7 of them at this point, and I still don't get it right. I still pay the price. In fact, I'm paying the price right now. I'm paying the price right now. And the fact that I knew we needed a game room for our kids when they got older, but I was like, oh, we can wait. To be fair, we didn't have as much money back then either. But it's a mistake, and we're paying for that mistake. We're paying for that mistake and the fact that we've had contractors in the house for 3 months now putting that room in. So you never get it right, or you always have some type of buyer remorse. So let's do an example. You let this happen, which nobody wants to have happen. By the way, just so you get perspective of this, I've sold, probably around 4,000 houses in my career. Okay. And that does include some of my crew too. That's not just me talking. I mean, I've supervised over 4,000 home sales, and a lot of those are, in fact, mine. I have less than the times on this hand allowed a buyer to lease when I represent the seller. That's significant. And I'm a nice guy. Think about if you're a jerk and you're like, no way, 5 times or less. Okay. So some of you are like, well, that's really harsh. Why? All right. Well, one is the obvious one that we already talked about, that they might not actually be able to close on the house. Even if we've been shown everything, there is a chance that could happen. And that's not a good one. So that scares us. Okay. Then we have this philosophy what we were talking about a second ago called test driving. So let's say you're in Texas, it's July, you're moving, lousy time to move in Texas, super hot. Spend all day, you know how lousy it is to move, get all your stuff, done. And you finally decide you smell horrible, you're sweating, and you're like, I need to go get a shower. So you go into your master shower. This is the first shower you're going to take in your new home that you say you're going to be there for a lifetime. Nobody ever is, but you say that, right? Because that's what's in your head. You get in there, you turn that shower on, you're so excited to get in there, and you get meaning you have lousy water pressure. All right. The shower is it's a terrible shower. It's a terrible shower head. There is nothing worse than knowing that you are about to pay for the rest of your, what you would say, life or your house life, because most people cannot stand a soft shower. Now, you might think this is trivial, right? And that's why I use this one when I teach this concept quite a bit. That's why I use this one, because I'm putting it into perspective for you, how something so small can cause a big issue.
Or what if you find you get in the house and your truck doesn't fit?
So the truck, how many times does the actual garage not fit a truck? Which is amazing to me that GMC, Ford, and all those guys never put in their heads, hey, these trucks need to fit X amount, because most of these garages won't fit them. Yeah, so you get that. That's another one, right? And that's a good one. And that's why he's on, because this isn't scripted. We do this live. And I always like to point out too, ours is not a podcast. Ours is a live broadcast. It streams, and then we go to podcast. So the show we do, we don't script like a lot of people. Like a lot of the fancy podcasts you see they're done and everybody's proper. And every time, once in a while, you'll see a Twitch where they switched topics because they went to the new, because they didn't do that one right, or that one didn't. We don't do that. Ours is just blah. It's right there, whether we mess it up or not. We just go through it. But we also have people on here that can contribute that aren't talking about the same things that I have scripted down. So that's a good one. I didn't even think about that. And it's the same breath, the same thing. A little truck, not a little truck, a big truck, but you would think that that's not a big deal. But you're renting, and you're supposed to remember, right now, you're supposed to be paying for this house. You're bound to pay for it. And you got people waiting for you to pay for it. So now you can't get your truck in. You go in and you lay on the floor, you're like grieving, and you're sitting there, God. And then you notice that there's this big crack in the ceiling that you never saw before. All right, now, this goes over and over again, what we're talking about. We don't even have enough time to talk about all these examples. These are enough, though, that a buyer, they start having bad remorse. And they might have such bad remorse that they're like, I'm just not going to do this. Now, you want to talk about getting yourself in a lot of trouble and a lot of hot water, no pun intended with the shower conversation. Go ahead and try to back out of a deal where you were signed to move in on a certain day. Your people didn't get it done. The seller, out of the graciousness of their heart, let you go in. And now you're saying you're not going to do it because you see things that you don't like in the house. The courts are very unsympathetic to someone like that. They don't like that type of person, because that person was given an act of God to get into that house. And that's how they turn the appreciation level, because they saw some things they don't like. Y'all, I got news for you. There's always going to be things in your house you don't like. Always. Whether it's your spouse, whether it's something, there's always going to be something in that house you don't like. And it is not the seller's fault. So this is one of the main reasons why, when we start talking about this ugliness of what we call a buyer's template, that's in the industry, that's what it is. This is a buyer's template. It is very rare that we are going to be very supportive of that buyer moving in before they paid. Yeah, we don't even have enough time on the show to discuss, but we haven't even discussed what happens. What about the risk?
Mm-hmm.
What happens if the buyer moves in? They're supposed to pay on Monday. They move in on Saturday, and they leave one of those stupid Scentsy things on. Not Scentsy stupid, but they being stupid that they put the Scentsy thing on, and it burns the house down. By the way, if you think that that's a made-up example, it is not. It's happened before. I can count on the times in my hand the other way of something like that happening during that time frame. Now, I'll give you a more popular one. Well, not a more popular one, but one that happens more often, especially in Texas. What happens when the buyer moves in? This is the worst. Well, it's not the worst, because we're talking about fire and other stuff, but it's bad. What happens when the buyer moves in and they turn that air conditioner down to 65, and that air conditioner says, this sucks, and it breaks? Who's responsible for that air conditioner right now?
Yep, it's the seller.
It's the seller. It's the seller. And look, you don't have to have a degree from Harvard to put it together, how a seller responds when they weren't in their house and they let someone who they didn't want in their house be in their house, and the air conditioner all of a sudden breaks. Now, here's the sick part. Most sellers will be like, y'all broke it.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all broke it. It's been fine since but in reality, and it does suck that it breaks at that point, but in reality, it probably was some of the use before that finally caused that thing to break down by the seller. But here they are And I don't blame them. Trust me. I'm actually on the seller side on this. I get annoyed with it. I'm like, that sucks. That is the worst, because this was already supposed to be your house. And because you can get your stuff down, now I'm on the hook for that air condition. That can be very difficult. That's another, y'all look, just listen to what we're talking about.
And I would say that if somebody had used our sponsor, Martin Cooley at BPG Inspections, the air conditioner probably would have been caught.
That's a great cut in there, Brent. Why don't you go ahead and tell them about the two sponsors that we have?
All right, so we've got two sponsors today. We've got Martin Cooley with BPG Inspections. He is our go-to guy. We often recommend several inspectors to our clients, but Martin Cooley is the guy that we recommend the highest, just because he has given us the most excellent service, the most excellent reports, just a consummate professional. The way he creates his inspection reports, everything's color-coded. He's a good-looking guy. You can see him right there. And
I thought you were talking about me. I turned, I was like, yes.
Oh, him too. But no, I mean, he creates inspection reports that are color-coded and bullet-pointed, so you can figure out what's really important. And so you can book him on bpginspections.com, or if the crawl across the bottom of the screen happens, like, and look, there it is, you can reach him at 817-401-3240. And he is the guy that we recommend. So Martin Cooley at bpginspections.com. Our second sponsor, my dad, with Greg Holdberg with Liberator Health Insurance.
No bias.
No bias. I'm not just the son of the owner. I'm also a client. Liberator Health Insurance has plans to allow you to see any doctor and go to any hospital in or out of network. You can save 40 to 60% on your premiums. Liberator just insured a family of 4 with great benefits for $475 per month. These plans offer the largest PPO provider network in the United States that covers hospitalizations and surgeries, doctor visits, preventative health screenings, teledoc, x-rays, MRIs, labs, emergency rooms, and urgent care, and much more. So you are now free to choose whatever health insurance plan that fits your needs the best. And for more insurance, to get a quick quote, call Greg Holdberg, independent health insurance broker, at 214-886-4688, or visit them at liberatorhealthinsurance.com. My family and I, we are clients, and we are saving a ton of money and having great service as well. So
yeah. So and here's the thing with our vendors. First of all, our sponsors. We don't just let anybody sponsor on the show. And I say that you should advertise on the show and all that type of stuff, which it is a really good. It's a low amount of money to get good advertising, especially when you're dealing with what's considered to be one of the largest teams in the country in Keller Williams. But we don't just put anybody out there. If it's someone that I'm not very supportive of or I don't trust, just because they're willing to pay us to be a sponsor, I'm not going to let them do it. The people that we put on are people that we sincerely trust, that we know, and that we've gone through. You don't get any bigger trust than being Brent's dad. We joke about it being Brent's dad. It's beyond that. We're just saying that because we know how good he is at what he does. He wouldn't be on the sponsor if it wasn't for what he does. Brent has nothing to do with whether his dad comes on. He's that good, but we joke about him because we love his dad so much. We want to talk about him. So that's the only reason he's talked about like that. But in the end, his business sense and what he does is second to none. That's why he's on here, just like Martin's as well. Hey, I love the new. Look at that. That's great.
Looks good.
That's new, Mark. So our producer has the screen where people are commenting on the show, and that's a bigger, brighter one there. I love that, and thank you for that, Kathy. He is great. He's a great guy, and by the way, that's a good ringing endorsement for anybody who watches that thinks about sponsoring our show. That right there, she doesn't know him if it's not for this type of advertising on there. So that's fantastic. I love that. Sharon said it happened. We didn't discover a truck didn't fit in our back driveway. Yeah, she's talking about the possession there too. Mark's throwing some of the earlier ones out there. It does happen. It happens all the time. These things that can happen during a lease back are quite the quandary when you think about it. We didn't talk about during the spring. In the spring, some people listen to this stuff and they go, "I don't believe you." I'm like, "Oh, it's believable." I go, "It happens." We see where a tornado rips through after they're supposed to close on Friday. And I'd be lying to you if I didn't tell you that I get just a tad nervous when we know that we have a situation like that in the firm. which by the way, I usually do, because it would have had to have gone through me at that point because there were problems, because that's what I do. I have to monitor and fix the problems or endure them one way or the other. And I know when we have someone that was supposed to close on a house and then we either have a tornado or a hailstorm that goes through the next day, those are awful days for me. Awful days, because I'm going to have to break bad news to someone and they ain't going to like it.
Yep.
They are not going to like it. That's why I told you this show's so nasty. This one right here. I mean, it's just, and I joke about when I say nasty, it's just a terrible thing. And I preach it all the time. Real estate, 97% of the days are just kick ass, and it's the best job I ever had. Most flexible, most fun, most financially lucrative thing you can do where you manage it. And that's a fact. That's why, again, join SWR.com. Anybody who watches it, pass it on to your friends. You should be passing that website on all the time, because you're doing them a favor. We're not talking about general recruiting and general soliciting to the firm. We're doing them a favor. I don't even look at it anymore. When somebody comes and wants, you would think that's an opportunity for me. We are doing them a favor by telling them to go to that site. Believe me, there is nothing bad that's going to come from you thinking about being a real estate. And there's certainly nothing bad going to come from the fact that we're willing to help you no matter what it is that you're doing. So, we joke about plugging the website and the show, but we're not plugging anything. We're offering you help. We are giving you something that you do not have. And we think for most of the agents out there, it is very promising for them that are not sure that that's what they want to do. We think it's a very good start for them. So we really want to encourage everybody to go through there, because that is what we preach on the show. All right, Brent, can we think of anything else we want to say right before we wrap it up?
Well, I mean, do we want to just kind of quickly go over some of the things that people can do or agents can do to make these situations better, such as, like I said earlier?
I'm curious what you're going to say. Say what you were going to say.
So, I mean, on the buy side, you've got to make sure your buyer knows that there's a good potential that your close is going to get delayed or funding will get delayed. So try not to schedule anything on a Thursday or Friday if you can avoid it. Make sure that there's no holidays that you're scheduling around, and tell your buyers to prepare to move in a few days after. If you're closing on a Thursday or Friday, tell them to move in on a Tuesday. Plan that. For a seller, we always recommend, I like it where my guys are going to lease back for a little bit. They're going to close on whatever day, close on a Thursday and then lease back until a Sunday or till Monday, whatever. It just gives them time so that it doesn't happen right away. No, there's no panic.
By the way, that's a huge takeaway from the show, because we only have so much time. He's talking about where the seller leases back, where the seller says, well, we'll close today, but we're going to stay to it. This is the opposite of what we've been talking about, but this is a good protection for this type of event. When in fact the buyer can't close, the seller's like, well, I'm still pissed, but I'm not as pissed because I was already going to be in the house anyways. Now we're going to push that back. So that is good advice.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, and just as long as you're setting expectations on both sides, there really should never be a time when you can't say to your client, I told you so, right?
Yeah. And I'll also add on to it, the worst that can happen, and it's bad, and I'm not saying there's anything you really can do to stop it. It's more just being weary of it. You need to know, whether you're an existing or veteran agent or a new agent, you have got to have knowledge as to who is coming into the house and what do they have to do to get into the house. I always ask a buyer, what is it that you're having to do right now? Well, we have to sell our house. Okay. I'm like, that's great. Is that strong right now? Is it solid? Are you through option? Are you through appraisal? Have you even listed the house yet? I want to know that their buyer is solid. And then if they tell me they have a buyer, then I've got to ask, what about their buyer? Because Brent's talking about trying to prevent this. There's not much we can prevent.
No.
But we damn well can tell everybody that ain't a good idea if you sign that. And
Yep.
If you do sign it, I'm telling you right now, I don't want to hear one word from you when this crashes. And that's exactly what I'm doing with my clients. I am laying it on the line saying, I don't like it. And you should be able to judge by my demeanor here. I am not one that encourages contingencies. You want to talk about the devil? Whoo. I mean, they might as well have 666 on those contingency transactions, because you're in Vegas rolling the dice and you got a lot behind the line and you're just hoping that you do not crap out, because it is a bad situation when it goes bad. I mean, like really, really bad. I told y'all, I've got very thick skin Now, I do believe one of my greatest expertise is, and I can take just about as much shit from anybody. I can get past any type of really, really bad issue. It actually is one of the things I would say I am good at, is that I can take the shit and I can usually get past it, and I will offer a solution. I am the great compromiser. But even then, of all those things, you got to realize, 120 or some agents, anywhere from 120, 150 agents at times. And I see a lot. There is nothing worse than I have to deal with than this situation we're talking about right now. When we have someone who's in a domino and they're the last domino and there are 3 or 4 other families that are affected by it. You don't want to be the last domino and you don't want to be the first domino. The first domino sucks because you're the one that's going to get yelled at more than anybody. The last domino sucks is you're still going to get yelled at, but all these people in between are affected. And because I do care about not only my agents, other agents, and people going through this process, because I do have a very empathetic heart to those people, it wears on me. It is probably the few times that I don't sleep as well, knowing that that's out there. And y'all see some bad stuff where I go back, I fall asleep when I hit the pillow and it doesn't bother me in the least bit. This one, it does the occasional 3 o'clock where I know something's wrong and I wake up. That's how bad these can be. So we'll talk through a lot of other shows about how to avoid these types of things, through other nicks that we do in the real estate process, because that's what this show is here for. It's to inform you. It's teaching you stuff that's out of the book. It's not in the book. We don't teach the stuff in the book. That's why people like to watch this show. That's why agents like to watch this show. They are getting the experience that I've had for 20 years right now. They don't have to wait. All they have to do is listen and go, that guy said that this happened. I never thought in the world that would happen. That's why we do it. That's why people watch it. That's why they tell everybody else to watch it. And we thank all of y'all. Make sure that you push the show. I did a bad job last week. I'm usually really good about reposting the show. And you can tell by the levels, if I don't repost it, not as many people watch it. But the good part is this one is actually part 2 of what we did last week. So I'm just going to tell you to watch both of them this week and pass that on to everybody, because this was a very good show from the educational and academic standpoint when it comes to real estate. We are at, what's the date today? We're on the 10th. So we have 17. So my guess is we're going to do one more show. We're going to do next week, the 17th. Yep. And then after that, we're going to take a break of at least a week, maybe 2 weeks. I don't know. We'll have to talk about that more.
Christmas Eve, then New Year's Eve. So we'll probably be back on the 7th is my guess.
So you think it follows you think it might be a 2-week break in there?
Might. Well, I mean, do you think we're going to do Christmas Eve?
No. Is it on? Is the next one? Is that where it falls?
Next one's Christmas Eve, then the next is New Year's Eve.
No. I know we're not doing Christmas Eve. We'll do the 17th. We're not doing Christmas Eve, and then the 24th goes to the 30th. It'll be New Year's Eve.
New Year's Eve, Christmas
Mark,
Eve.
I saw you came. Mark's in. He's ready to talk.
You can do the 31st.
So
you'll just miss Christmas Eve. So the next one you have the 17th. Then you'll be off on the 24th, and you'll be good to go on the 31st, the last one of the year, and then you'll be great on the 7th for the first one of the year.
And we'll talk about whether we do Christmas Eve or not. I don't know if I want you to have.
I wouldn't do Christmas Eve.
What's that?
I wouldn't do Christmas Eve.
Right. So we're probably do a 2-week break there.
Yep.
All right. That's good. All right. Good deal. That's good that we went through that. So next week we'll have to have a really good show that gets us through a couple of weeks. We'll try to think of something really good to get us through the holiday season. Again, I want to thank everybody out there. I'm going to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. That won't be on next week because I know some of y'all won't. And then for everybody else, we'll see y'all next inning. We'll get rid of this year and we'll get into the new year. One more show to get rid of past this most awful year. You guys have a good one. We'll talk to you later.